The day Grandma died, the house stopped feeling like a home. It became a place full of echoes, of unfinished sentences and memories that clung to the walls. Her bedroom door was still open, her shawl folded neatly on the chair, as if she might walk back in at any moment and ask me why I looked so sad. She had raised me with quiet patience after our parents passed away, loving me without conditions, without expectations. To me, she wasn't just my grandmother. She was my entire world. My sister, Nadia, arrived late to the funeral, just as I knew she would. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, breaking the fragile silence. She wore expensive black clothes and dark sunglasses, her arm firmly looped through her husband's, Arslan, a judge, a title she carried like a weapon. Even in a room full of grief, Nadia managed to look bored. While others whispered prayers, Nadia leaned close to relatives, talking about influence, about courtrooms, about power. She didn't shed a single tear. I stood near Grandma's coffin, my chest aching, my fingers brushing the polished wood, as if that touch could somehow keep her with me. I wanted to confront my sister, to ask her how she could be so cold, but grief pressed my words deep into my throat. 2 days later, we gathered in Grandma's living room. Sunlight filtered through the curtains she loved, casting soft patterns on the floor. The lawyer was supposed to arrive for the will reading, and I sat quietly on the edge of the sofa, nervous and exhausted. This was the last thing Grandma had left behind, her final voice. Nadia slouched comfortably across from me, scrolling through her phone. Suddenly, she laughed under her breath and looked up. "Why are we even waiting?" she said casually. "Let's skip the will reading. My husband's a judge." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. "Skip it," I asked. "This is Grandma's will." She smirked, lowering her phone. "Please." She was old and confused. "Things like this can be handled." The word stung. Handled, as if Grandma's wishes were nothing more than paperwork to be rearranged. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. An elderly man stood at the door, holding a leather briefcase. His presence was calm, deliberate. "Good afternoon," he said gently. "I'm Mr. Halim, your grandmother's attorney." Nadia's confident smile faltered. He stepped inside, looked directly at her, and added, "I believe we are right on time." For the first time since Grandma's death, something stirred inside me. Not grief, hope. Mr. Halim did not waste time. He declined the tea my aunt nervously offered and chose the dining table instead, the same one where Grandma used to sit every morning, sipping her weak tea and reading the newspaper aloud to me. He placed his leather briefcase down carefully, almost reverently, as if he understood the weight of the moment. The room grew unbearably quiet as he opened it and arranged the documents in front of him. Nadia shifted in her seat, clearly irritated. "I don't see why this needs to be so formal," she said, glancing at Arslan for reassurance. "My husband is a judge. Any legal confusion can be cleared up immediately." "Mr." Halim looked at her, his expression polite but firm. "Your grandmother specifically instructed that I conduct this reading myself," he replied calmly. She was very clear. That seemed to unsettle Nadia. She crossed her arms, her confidence thinning, while Arslan's jaw tightened slightly. Mr. Halim began by listing small bequests, donations to charities Grandma supported, money set aside for her caretaker, old family jewelry to be distributed among distant relatives. Nadia relaxed a little, as if she were waiting for the part that truly mattered. Then Mr. Halim paused. "There is an important note," he said, folding his hands. "Your grandmother revised her will 6 months ago." Nadia sat up straight. "Revised? Why would she do that?" Mr. Halim glanced down at the paper. "After a personal incident that caused her significant distress." My heart clenched. I remembered that night clearly. Grandma sitting at the kitchen table long after everyone had left, her eyes red, her hands shaking as she stirred cold tea. She told me she was tired, but I knew better. Nadia had demanded money, accused her of choosing sides, and left without looking back. Mr. Halim cleared his throat. She requested that this section be read exactly as written. He read slowly, deliberately. To my elder granddaughter, Nadia, you have my love, but love should never be forced through fear, status, or pride. I forgive the pain you caused me, but forgiveness does not require reward. The words hung in the air like smoke. Nadia's face went pale. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She wouldn't write that. Mr. Halim continued, his voice steady, to my younger granddaughter, the one who stayed when it was inconvenient, who listened when I had no strength left. I leave everything else. The room erupted. Nadia jumped to her feet, shouting accusations, calling me ungrateful, manipulative, a liar. My ears rang, but through the chaos one thing became clear. Grandma had spoken, and her voice was stronger than any title, any power. Mr. Halim raised his hand. There is more to be read, he said firmly, and I knew this was only the beginning. The room felt smaller after the shouting stopped, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Nadia stood frozen, her chest rising and falling too fast, while Arslan placed a protective hand on her arm. I could barely breathe. My hands were cold, my heart pounding, but Mr. Halim remained calm, almost solemn, as if he had expected this moment all along. There is additional documentation, he said quietly. He opened his briefcase again and removed a thick bundle of envelopes tied with a faded ribbon. My breath caught when I recognized the handwriting on the top one. Grandma's, slightly shaky but unmistakable. These are personal letters written by your grandmother over the past year. Mr. Halim explained. She instructed me to preserve them in case her wishes were challenged. Nadia let out a sharp laugh. Letters, that proves nothing. Mr. Halim nodded once, on their own, perhaps not, but these are supported by records, dates, messages, witness statements. Arslan straightened. You're crossing a line. This is a family matter. Mr. Halim finally looked directly at him. His voice did not rise, but it carried weight. Then you should be concerned, Judge Arslan, because your name appears multiple times. Silence crashed down on the room. Nadia turned slowly toward her husband. What does he mean? She whispered. Mr. Halim read aloud fragments from the letters. Grandma wrote about being pressured to change her will, about being reminded repeatedly that her son-in-law was a judge, about feeling afraid to speak, afraid to disappoint, afraid to lose the little piece she had left. Each word felt like a confession she had never been brave enough to say out loud. Tears blurred my vision. I remembered her gentle smiles, her calm voice. I never imagined how much she had been carrying alone. I never threatened her. Nadia said weakly, I was just talking. Influence can be a form of pressure, Mr. Halim replied, especially when power is involved. He placed the letters back into the briefcase. Your grandmother created legal safeguards. Any attempt to contest this will triggers a review of these documents by the appropriate authorities. Arslan's face darkened. For the first time, the man who always seemed untouchable looked uncertain. Nadia sank back onto the sofa, her confidence completely gone, her voice cracked. She could have just told me. She tried. I said softly, surprising myself. You just didn't listen. Nadia looked at me then, truly looked at me, and something in her expression broke, not anger, regret. Mr. Halim closed the briefcase with a quiet click. The transfer will proceed as outlined. Your grandmother did not seek revenge, he said gently. She sought peace. As he stood to leave, I felt something shift inside me. Grandma was no longer silent. She was finally heard. The house changed after that day. It no longer felt heavy with unspoken words or trapped emotions. Slowly, room by room, it began to breathe again. I stayed in Grandma's home, not because of what she left me, but because leaving felt like abandoning her all over again. I opened windows that had been shut for years, letting sunlight spill across the floors she once polished by hand. I repaired small things, the loose cupboard door, the cracked step by the porch, as if fixing the house could also mend something inside me. The money came later, quietly, without drama. Papers were signed, accounts transferred, promises fulfilled. But none of it felt as powerful as sitting in the garden one evening, replanting Grandma's rose bushes exactly where she liked them. My hands sank into the soil, and for the first time since her death, my tears felt gentle instead of sharp. Nadia disappeared for a while. No calls, no messages. The silence hurt, but it was different from before. It wasn't neglect anymore. It was distance earned. Then one afternoon, months later, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, Nadia stood there alone. She looked smaller somehow. No heels, no expensive perfume, no carefully controlled smile. Her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped, and in that moment, she looked less like my powerful sister and more like a lost child. "I didn't come for anything," she said quickly, as if afraid I would shut the door. "I just needed to see you." I stepped aside and let her in. We sat in the living room where Grandma used to knit, the same place where everything had fallen apart. Nadia's hands trembled as she spoke. I thought power would protect me, that it made me untouchable. Her voice broke, but I lost her, and I lost myself. I listened, not because she deserved it, but because Grandma had taught me that listening can be an act of mercy. "I was wrong," Nadia whispered, "about you, about her, about everything." Forgiveness didn't arrive like a dramatic moment. It came softly, like the way Grandma used to place a blanket over my shoulders when I fell asleep on the couch. I nodded. That was enough. Nadia left before sunset. There was no promise of closeness, no instant healing, just honesty. That night, I stood in Grandma's room and whispered thank you, not for the house or the money or even the justice, but for teaching me that the sweetest revenge isn't humiliation or loss. It's truth, and when truth finally speaks, even the loudest power has no choice but to fall silent.